non-neurotypical.
Yeah, let's talk about the
I'll
non-neurotypical.
be right back.
Okay, bathroom and coffee?
Yes, I can copy you.
Thank you. I am so tired. I have a child that has viral laryngitis, which means that mommy has not slept. I mean, Ian also doesn't sleep. I don't want to imply that, like, I'm the only one taking care of the kid. Ian is a good parent. And we do not do that gender role. Non-neurotypicality. So the basic answer is absolutely it is going to affect your magic because it affects everything. It affects your identity. It affects your ability to do things in everyday life. The thing is that there are so many different things that are considered non-neurotypicality. And each one is going to have a different effect. So I'm going to touch on this first super, super broadly and tell you that being non-neurotypical does not mean you can't do magic. It does not mean that. And I understand that the witchcraft and spiritual community, whether secular or non-secular, is exceedingly ableist. It's really drenched in the positivity doctrine, which is basically like, so many issues with the positivity doctrine. I have so many, but I'm just going to say, basically it's very anti-medication. It's very anti-therapy. It's very it's anti-person. It's anti-person. It is pro-automaton. It wants people to be perfect robots. That's what the positivity doctrine does. Perfect, positive robots who never experience a full 3/4 of the human spectrum of emotion. And it does not allow for non-neurotypical people to practice magic. It does not. And the people who have said that the positivity doctrine is helping them practice magic, I gotta tell you that there have been extensive studies that addressing non-neurotypicality via the positivity doctrine does severe damage, like big time damage. There are concerns there. So please do some research into that if you do intend to walk that path to handle your depression, to handle your anxiety. It makes it worse. It makes it worse over time. I'm trying to sum up something that I've had just long-term issues with. There is a healthy positivity doctrine.
Oh, I can talk about that if you want, sweetheart.
It's not what's being taught. There is the unhealthy positivity doctrine. Don't feel anything negative, just be positive. And if you're positive, good things will happen to you. That's unhealthy. Healthy positivity doctrine. You have been through harder things than this. You will get through this too. Okay? Unhealthy positivity doctrine. Don't get angry. Anger is bad. If you are angry, then you will just attract negative energies to you and worse things will happen. You need to learn to let that go. Healthy positivity doctrine. You are capable of facing this anger. You are capable of controlling it. You are capable of embracing it and understanding the reasons for it. And if you understand where it stems from, and if you process it in a healthy and complete fashion, you may move beyond this anger. Do you see the difference? Whenever I talk about the positivity doctrine, people think that I'm talking about the latter. Nobody's teaching that out here. Like, not one goddamn teacher that I have been to out here is teaching that. They are teaching the secret. They're teaching the secret, yes, which is victim blaming bullshit. It is victim blaming bullshit. And if you as a non-neurotypical person try to do that to yourself, if you say, have OCD, like I do, and you try to go, if I can just take all of my catastrophization and anxiety and depression and fear and just stick it in this box and I put this positive band-aid on top of it, I will attract only good things for myself. Do you know what happens to me if
That's
I fail?
what we call repression.
Do you know what happens to someone with OCD if they fail at that? It will blame themselves. They will blame themselves for absolutely everything that goes wrong because it means they didn't positive hard enough.
Now, can I shift
Yes.
back to the original question?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I got distracted by other questions I could see popping up. All right, original question, non-neurotypicality and magic.
Non-neurotypicality, okay. Magic is ultimately based on your belief and how you think. Which means that being non-neurotypical, which has a direct impact on how you think, is going to have a direct impact on your magic.
Which could be good.
Which could be good
or
or
bad.
bad, or both. You know,
Mine is both.
Mine is both. There are good elements that come from it. There are not so good elements that come from it. The thing is...
Although I really dislike it when people tell us that we should be grateful that we are non-neurotypical because it gave us all of these magical abilities and that we wouldn't have them if we were neurotypical.
Okay, I'm gonna... Quick break for a TV tropes rant. Stop with the damn disability superpower trope. That being where... Oh, you are disabled, you are non-neurotypical, you have this thing, and it gave you superpowers. Isn't that awesome? Like, Daredevil is the quintessential example of this, where...
Which is not trying to say that disabled people shouldn't have heroes.
No.
Representation matters.
Representation is awesome. But there's this tendency to where you get someone who is disadvantaged, either social...
Well, let's talk about the damage that's been done to the autistic community by magical autism. Magical autism in movies. Okay, and I'm saying this as someone who has a great deal of family on the spectrum and who is likely on the spectrum myself. My therapist and I are debating back and forth on whether or not I have Asperger's or
It's a little hard to tell.
It's a little hard to tell because OCD can present so similarly.
Yeah.
So my brother is, you know, we're still as a family determining how extensive this is in our family. But my brother was deeply damaged by the magical autism thing, which is basically that in the movies that feature autistic characters, they are super geniuses, they are savants, and they can do all manner of insane things, and every portrayal of autistic characteristics is from this magical autism. They're very good at math, or they're very, or they're, they have an eidetic memory.
Think a beautiful mind.
Right, and so...
I mean, that was schizophrenia, but...
My brother's autism was very badly handled because everyone treats autistic people as if they divide into two categories: the useful genius with the superpower, or the annoying ones who need to learn to mask everything that makes them an autistic person to better fit into neurotypical society. And that's the only two you're allowed to be. You're only allowed to be visibly and consistently autistic in presentation if you're a superpowered autistic person. And this really hurt my brother because he basically spent his whole life going, when is my superpower going to kick in? When am I going to be superpowered? An issue I have in the community is I keep being told that I should be grateful for my seizures because they're why I see the spirit world so clearly.
First of all, you have no evidence to support that.
No. You don't know if I see it more clearly when they're worse. You've never asked.
And
people who tell me that I should be grateful have never asked. So let's talk about how it will. Okay, one, neurotransmitter balance is different.
Yes. And
there is a lot of research into the fact that neurotransmitters influence how we transmit our energy. Really, I should pass this to you to talk about, but I'm talking about the Princeton research into how controlling your neurotransmitter balance and your neuroactivity changes the projection of your bioelectric energy.
Basically, they found that actually a fantastic bit of study on this is John C. Lilly's Programming and Metaprogramming the Human Biocomputer, where he starts to talk about the ability to not only think, but then think about how you think, and have thinking about how you think alter the physiological structures that are doing your thinking, because this is actually a thing that it's been documented possible to do, will produce variable effects. And in the context of the pairs research, they found that some of the variance in effect that you get comes from things like state of your glycoreceptor index, how efficiently or how much dopamine and serotonin you have going on, and that people with different neurochemical balances could do things like activate the random number generator lamps at a different rate.
Now, in particular, one of the interesting things they found backs up something that drives me nuts when people talk about Van Gogh. They found that if your neurotransmitters were depressed, if you were producing a great deal but not receiving a great deal, which is a known issue, or if you were not producing enough, or if they were binding incorrectly, something that causes chemical depression, then it is very, very difficult for you to influence a random number generator. And this kind of puts the kibosh on this idea that I keep encountering in the spiritual community and the art community, that you should
be a depressed, suffering person,
not address your depression, not seek to, seek treatment for your non-neurotypicality or your personality disorders or whatever, because that's where your gifts are going to come from. People say this about Van Gogh too, that we should be grateful he was so tormented.
Because that's
where his art came from.
It's not that. We can arguably be grateful he was synesthetic for the art that it produced, although that's still.
But in particular,
potentially problematic.
We've known for years from his diaries, from the diaries of his friends, that when he was going through treatment and when he was taking his antidepressants, he actually produced more artwork, and that he wrote and his family wrote about the fact that he wished he was not so tormented, because when the torments were greater, he couldn't paint.
It's almost like
we'd have more artwork if he received consistent treatment.
Yeah, it's almost like being horribly depressed makes it hard to do things.
Which is going to affect your magic. If you are horribly anxious, it's hard to feel like you have enough power.
If you're horribly depressed, it's hard in my experience, barring a couple of workarounds, if you are deeply depressed, it is difficult to muster the will. One of the workarounds involves spite.
No, it doesn't. I feel really called out right
now. I do too.
I do all kinds of magic out of spite. I get out of bed because of spite.
Some mornings spite is the only reason you get out of bed.
Yep. Also Alexander.
Yeah, okay.
So, things that will...
So, as far as... I'll speak to my own experience of ways that being non-neurotypical has changed how I do magic.
And then I can speak to mine.
Yeah. Rather than caused problems for. I think we covered that. I have a couple of different non-neurotypical things going on, one of which is bipolar disorder, which, see also previous comments about depression. It is really easy to do magic during a hypomanic episode.
But he does damage to himself and everyone around him if he does it.
Yeah, but that also causes non-trivial damage to everyone, me included. I worked out how to intentionally generate that neurological reaction recently. I'm not allowed to do it.
No, you are not allowed to intentionally trigger a hypomanic state.
Because the amount of damage that can do is just enormous.
For adrenal function, if nothing else.
Right, and I don't just mean socially, I also mean to myself physiologically. The other big one that I have is borderline personality disorder. And oh boy, does this have some effects. Okay. In my case, the big thing that shifts is that by default, people are cardboard cutouts of people. By default, I don't see them as actual realized human beings, and I have to put in effort to remember that they are. What this means in practice is that I can essentially flip back and forth between seeing people as people and not. It makes being able, so it actually is very helpful for doing something like, paradoxically, healing work. Because I've already had to put in that effort of reminding myself that this is a fully realized human being. I'm not coming from the place that a lot of my colleagues when I was working as a healer are coming from, of being kind of phoning it in, or having a rough day, or, yeah, of course I know that, moving on. I have to start there. And that actually is very helpful. Paradoxically, it also makes it much easier to do things like curses, because I don't have to care. I don't have to go over the fact that I'm intentionally doing damage to another human being, because suddenly I'm not.
God, that would be tempting. I mean, I can't get there. I can't have people.
And so for me, part of the gigantic problem is that it raises huge ethical concerns. Just enormous ethical concerns. Like, if I adopted a utilitarian philosophy of ethics, oh, this person's not useful enough to be important, I don't have to worry about hurting them in this. That leads to some really bad places really quickly. The other thing is that I have to make sure I've got the switch flipped right. For whatever I'm trying to do.
Yeah. I've been there when that didn't work.
Yeah.
Should I?
So one other thing that I'll talk about briefly is that I think that the ways that I managed my bipolar disorder greatly influence the way that I think about magic. Because it essentially involves treating my thoughts as information streams and sort of riding herd on them. And coincidentally, I tend to treat magic as though I'm manipulating the information that defines how reality is structured. And I suspect that there's some correlation there. But that's sort of an overview for me. Does that...
So, okay, I'm alphabet soup.
Right.
I have OCD comorbid with OCPD. I have CPTSD. I have chronic anxiety disorder, night terrors, focal seizures with migraine and syncope, which is a form of epilepsy. Mess. I'm such a mess. And it has absolutely influenced my magic. But I'd be hard pressed to tell you what I would have been like without it, because I've been this way all my life.
Yay, counterfactuals.
Right, you know, I've been this way all my life, so it would be really hard to tell you what it would be like without it. I do know that OCD both makes my magic harder and easier. OCD in particular, mine, I don't have the things with, I was about to say I don't have the things with counting, but in some ways I do. I have to pull my door 3 times to make sure it's actually locked. I obsess, and I gave myself permission when I was very young to obsess over obtaining knowledge. I have a dragon's hoard of knowledge, and I prepare myself for everything. My brain goes, let's panic about this potential future, and my answer to that is, all right, I guess I better be prepared to handle that. I am somewhat concerned as I get older and I start developing more and more health difficulties as how that's going to affect my OCD, because I chronically prepare for everything, but there's only so much I can prepare for a failing body. But chronically...
You should start studying robotics and build yourself a mecha.
Right, build myself a mecha. Herbalism in particular. Well, like, one of the reasons why I know...
I said that, and that may actually be what happens over the next few years.
I obsessively studied herbs because I was terrified. Grandma was essentially like, someday you're going to be doing what I do. And she was a midwife and an herbalist, and she did medical assistance with herbs. I was sort of going like, oh my God, I'm going to kill somebody unless I like memorize everything. You know, my primary way that I do magic, however, is actually really, really difficult with the anxiety and the CPTSD and the obsessive compulsive disorder all telling me, you know, you're gonna fuck up, you're an imposter, you don't know what you're doing, you're so bad at this, everybody can tell that you don't. Right. And then the sicker I am, you know, with the fibromyalgia and the focal seizures and the migraines and the syncope, and now they're causing heart difficulties because my vagus nerve is not functioning. And sort of like, I don't feel very capable, I don't feel in control, I don't feel very powerful, and I have to be able to, because that's how I do my magic. And this has involved feeling powerful due to self-knowledge. I sort of took the part of me that's like, well, if I just know all the things, then I am prepared for all that comes. I know all the things about me, and that's how I did it. I sort of go like, all right, I'm a flawed, broken, fucked up mess. So be it. I can do this anyway. And so I get really, really uncomfortable when the positivity doctrine is sort of like, don't be you. Be this quarter you. It's only ever the things that our society says is good. And the things that our society says is good all involve turning a blind eye to a lot of what's going on inside of ourselves and a lot of what's going on in the world. It's, you know, it's not just self-damaging, it's world-damaging. This whole like, well, we shouldn't be angry and we shouldn't fight. And
it's the dog in the burning down house cartoon.
Right, and we shouldn't
Everything's
what's happening. We should just breathe and be light and love and be free. And no, you have to be able to look around and be like, this is some fucked up shit. I better roll up my sleeves and get to work. And you have to be able to do that externally and internally. Because as a non-neurotypical person, that's how I get anything done, is to go like, all right, that's on fire. Like, that's on fire. I better go to a therapist. I better go see my doctor. I better try some store-bought hormones because I'm not being able to grow my own. Like, I better go meditate. I better go work out on the elliptical until my brain's like, fine, you can have a dopamine. Like, you have to be able to look at it and say, all right, I need help. Whether I'm helping myself or I'm getting help from somebody, but I need help. And a lot of magical communities do not want you to do that. Like, I'm so tired of this. Well, Melissa, if you just took time to like make it to the ocean more often and like swim in the water, then you wouldn't have these problems. You know what happens when I do that? Then I'm depressed at the ocean. Oh. Where are we? It turned into a rant.
That did turn into a rant.
I'm all ranty today. I got really pissed off today.
You got really pissed off yesterday.
Okay, I got really pissed off yesterday, and then I was like, all right, I'm over it. I'm okay. I'm good. And then I got into work. I got really pissed off.
Also, yeah, agreeing with Kendall that yoga communities also often don't want you to experience painful emotions.
Which is so
really weird.
And it's just not yoga at all. Like, and I mean, I'm saying this as someone who attended a yoga class where like a white woman in Lululemon slacks was like, why is there Hindu chanting? I can't understand what they're saying. Make it less ethnic. I'm not misquoting. She said, make it less ethnic. Yoga out here has gotten co-opted by the commodification of spirituality, the capitalist spirituality. Pay us money to be spiritually happy, and by Calvinist values. Calvinist values say essentially, so the Calvinists are actually who founded the United States that we live in now. They came and stole the land and gave out smallpox
Come on,
blankets,
it
and
was
they.
the Calvinists and the Huguenots and the
But it's the Calvinist values that stuck around, and Calvinist values essentially say.
many of them, yes.
Calvinist
Carry on.
values essentially say if you are wealthy, it is a sign that the divine has blessed you. If you are healthy, it is a sign that the divine has blessed you. And if you are not wealthy and you are not healthy, then that is a sign that the divine has determined that it doesn't
are
like
not
you,
worthy.
you're unworthy, you are not blessed. And instead of like us helping you with that, you need to learn the lesson that it's trying to teach you. And you need to embrace this set of circumstances and be grateful for it. And if you are grateful enough, eventually you'll be lifted out of it. And if you're not being lifted out of it, if you're not magically made well, if you're not magically made wealthy enough to do all the things
Then you're
I'm
still
doing,
being punished by the
then
divine.
you're still being punished by the divine, and it must mean that you need to embrace it more. Tell me you've not heard a yoga instructor
Right.
teach that shit.
Someone in chat
It's-
said it's not particularly Christ-like. You're right, it's not, but Calvinist values are not limited to Christianity.
Oh God! So the Calvinist values, that's American Christianity is Calvinist, not all.
Like the doctrine of, but like evangelical, the doctrine of seeds comes straight out of Calvinism, and
Right.
New Age positivity doctrine, secret crap, also comes straight out of
Just
Calvinist
because you
values. It's just
introduced a goddess too
reskinned.
does not mean it's not Calvinist.